at Banaras Hindu University, where he became a professor and also head. And then he was already a disciple of J. Krishnamurti, and he resigned from Banaras Hindu University and became a spiritual guru kind of a thing. And he spent his entire time with Krishnamurti Foundation. So I see in Dr. Krupa Mujumdar the type of traits that my friend Krishna has. He left physics and he joined. He has not left physics. He is a great physicist. He did his PhD from Cavendish Lab, but he is approaching towards philosophy and religion, the interplay of that. Professor Krishna in that lecture. So these are not my words. I am a simple physics teacher, so I have been teaching quantum physics to undergraduate and graduate students at IIT for a long time. So Professor Krishna said that religions got equated with belief, dogma, rituals and faith, thereby creating divisions in the world. In the West, the scientific discoveries of Galileo in the 16th century contradicted the beliefs of the Christian church. He believed that the earth went around the sun and not the other way around, and the church believed the other way around. And he was persecuted and forced to recant his findings. From that time onward, there came a big divide between science and religion, which persists even today. And as most of you would know, on 17 February, the year 1600, Bruno was burned to death by the church because he also believed that our earth went round the sun and not the other way around. And on 22nd June 1633, Galileo, who is often called the father of modern physics, was sentenced to imprisonment because his views were contrary to the Holy Scripture, and therefore he was required to reject, curse and detest his opinions. According to a report in New York Times, published in 1992, more than 350 years after the Roman Catholic Church condemned Galileo, Pope John Paul II is poised to rectify one of the Church's most infamous wrongs, the persecution of Galileo for proving that Earth moves around the sun. In fact, Albert Einstein had said, and this is very important, a conflict arises when the religious community insists on the absolute truthfulness of all statements recorded in the Bible. This means an intervention of the part of religion into the sphere of science. This is where the struggle of the church against the doctrines of Galileo. And about spirituality, my friend Krishna said that it was the quest for truth. And our Dr. Majumdar is in a way like answering the same question. He did his doctoral work at Cavendish Lab, and now he has written a very nice book on discovering the truth. That's what he has written. Later I told Krishna that all my life I have been trying to teach basic quantum mechanics, elementary quantum mechanics to undergraduate students at IIT Delhi, in which we try to know the fundamental particles like electrons, protons and neutrons, and how they propagate, how they behave, how when you pass through two holes, how nature Schrödinger equation. And then Feynman also beautifully writes in his famous book that Schrödinger equation, where did that equation come from? And he writes beautifully that it didn't come from anywhere, it came from the mind of Schrödinger. That Schrödinger equation cannot be derived. So you see, but using this equation, he tries to find out, we can find out how the electron, which has a definite mass and a definite charge, can pass through both the holes at once. So if you have a beam of electrons passing through two tiny holes, and then on the back there is a screen, then you see a beautiful interference pattern. And so therefore you explain that by saying that the electron passes through both the holes at once. And that is what the wave function looks like. And how does the electron actually pass through both the holes? No one understands. So in fact, Feynman also writes that the two-slit experiment, the two-hole interference experiment, is the basis of quantum mechanics. And quantum mechanics is a subject that which no one understands. So quantum theory tells us that an electron passes through both the holes simultaneously. This is not the splitting of the electron into two halves, but only implies that if you wish to find out through which slit the electron passed, then half the time it will be found to have passed through slit number 1 and half the time through slit number 2. And it is the interference of the two which results in the probability distribution. So classical physics is deterministic in nature and quantum physics is probabilistic in nature. And therefore, according to quantum theory, we cannot predict where exactly the electron will be detected on the screen. But if we carry out the experiments at Cornell University on the character of physical law, and in the 6th and final lecture, he spoke on probability and uncertainty, in which he said, electrons do not behave like particles, they do not behave like waves. Electrons in orbits are not somewhat like a cloud or fog of some sort surrounding the nucleus. It behaves like nothing that you have seen before. With that one simplification, electrons behave exactly the same way as photons and protons. And Feynman also wrote that the double-slit interference experiment contains all the mysteries of quantum mechanics. So, Dr. Guha Majumdar says that in his book on the tremendous degree of accuracy. So, I will conclude by saying that in the preface of the book, Mrityunjay writes, what if everything you have told about finding truth is wrong? What if everything you have been told about finding truth is wrong? That scares me, because although no one understands quantum mechanics, it is in a very beautiful discussion of Brian Greene with Nobel laureate Alan Aspect, they say that quantum mechanics has been unreasonably accurate, unreasonably effective, and unreasonably resisting all kinds of attacks. Indeed, this is what I've been trying to teach my students all my life. But then Einstein, when he was about 67 years old, wrote in his autobiographical notes that this double nature of radiation and of material particles is a major property of reality which has been interpreted by quantum mechanics in an ingenious and amazingly successful fashion. This interpretation, which is looked upon as essentially final by almost all contemporary physicists, appeared to be as only a temporary way out. So he says that quantum mechanics is still not complete, and there will be some other theory which we hope will make us understand everything from first principles. In his later years, Schrödinger integrated the philosophy of the Vedas and Upanishads into his scientific view of the universe. I told Krishna that Professor Krishna that he is our Schrödinger. In any way, I would like to mention that that by reading a part of Mrityunjay's book, I feel that he is also a great physicist turned to a philosopher. Professor Krishna also mentioned something very profound. When you spend a lot of time learning science, you realize that we know very, very little. In spite of all our scientific and technological achievements, our knowledge of how this universe works, creation of life, etc., is minuscule. Therefore, studying science brings in humility. I conclude by saying that in India we have become a bit arrogant, and our education system should teach humility, compassion, and caring for others. In India, we have millions of very good and dedicated students who are waiting to be nurtured. What we require are teachers like Professor Hardy, who nurture people like Ramanujans to his glory. We require more people like Professor Guha Majumdar, and I congratulate him for this great book, and which tries to bring in answers to very difficult questions that we physicists have. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ghatak. You have reminded us